Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Buy the House, Build the Home.
Welcome to the podcast. We are so excited. We're in for a little treat today.
I hope we can make it through the podcast. Like, I hope we actually get all the information out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not just laughing the entire
I know,
podcast.
because one of my favorite people is on the show. Is it a show? The podcast?
I think it's a show.
It's an
a
episode.
show.
An episode. Michael Rareshide.
Woo!
Woo! Michael is one of the funniest people, one of my favorite people. I've known you for years. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself. How long have you been in real estate? And what do you do? Tell them about, he's a commercial real estate guru, investor,
Keep going.
designer.
Keep going.
You're all the things.
Yeah. Renaissance man, obviously.
He didn't know he was going to be so hyped on a Friday.
Well, I thank you so much for having me. I'm super
Yeah.
excited to chat with you guys today. I've been in, I guess, commercial real estate for probably about the last 15 years. Actually, really, Betty, you were kind of a real one of the first people I really ever, I don't even say worked with in a way, because I wasn't licensed or anything, but you kind of helped us buy some properties in Fort Worth. Me and
his dad,
and then my dad, and then our other partner started buying some investment properties, which we'll talk about today.
investing.
Yes, but that was like some of the first. So that was 5 or 6 years before I was probably even licensed or anything like that. But I got licensed about 10 years ago, and I jumped into commercial real estate, and I have been doing that ever since. I work on the corporate side now, so I only represent like tenants, only represent companies. I do national work, so I would say about 90% of my work is outside of Dallas now, Dallas-Fort Worth. But that's what I do, and I've love to talk a little bit about residential stuff, because as you know, I love following the residential markets, and I look at Realtor.com pretty religiously.
Michael will just text me Zillow links. What do you think about this? You should buy this, turn around, fix it, flip it. Which you have done that as well before, and you have a property in Dallas that is Airbnb currently?
It is an Airbnb, yeah. Okay. So we can talk about that some too. But yeah, I love the residential stuff. Sometimes there's a lot of days actually I go, man, I should be doing houses. It just seems way more fun. I watch Selling Sunset. I get big ideas about the
that's reality.
Exactly, and the shoes and the outfits that I could be wearing.
Don't get me started on Selling Sunset. It's not realistic.
Is it not?
No.
I thought it was like that was the Bible.
I hated it.
That was the Bible. That's the real estate Bible.
I mean, that's what I thought, right?
Oh my gosh.
I want to be a part of it. But yeah, so been like I said, doing that for about 10 years, and have a couple properties of my own now that we can talk about as well. So yeah.
Okay, so you sent us a really interesting article the other day about millennials.
Interesting
and
is
home
one
buying.
word.
Interesting.
Horrifying.
So
terrifying.
tell us a little bit about that.
So a New York Times article came out, and it was talking about peak millennials, and I think, to summarize so we don't get too granular, it's basically there's a lot of obstacles that we're having to deal with as a generation. We're all millennials, and I think that it just kind of showed with numbers and stuff that I won't bring up, that besides just the housing market in general, just building wealth, being able to buy your first home, that was something that I believe one of the writers that kind of went viral said something about millennials should be investing as opposed to spending their money on avocado toast. And that went pretty viral, and as it should, because that's a load of horse. But
tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, I think there are a lot of challenges, and I think that there's, I know people, and I'm sure you guys, know people that are, again, millennials that have said that they don't know if they'll ever own a home, which is wild to me, because I just always, I would have always assumed I'm going to own a home at least, right? And maybe that's the real estate background with, my family or whatever the case may be. But I think there's a lot of people out there that feel like there's too many hurdles to even just get their foot in the door. Yeah. And I think that article was just really interesting because, it talked about the recession, it talked about COVID, and how that's just made our journey into besides home ownership into just like generating wealth and
Right.
and stuff over time, really, really challenging.
Yeah.
We're honestly like inheriting a pretty broken economic system at this point. I shouldn't say system, but just like season, with all the debt that our country is currently in. I don't think people equate the fact that that trickles down on us
Sure.
as a whole. Like what our country is spending, we are being taxed, we are being, with inflation, all things like that. I do think it's funny that they criticized millennials for eating avocado toast, or like grabbing a $5 coffee. At the end of the day, of course, like watch your spending habits. It's not going to help you save $50K overnight.
No.
It's just not. Like
No.
I could go without avocado toast for a year and still not be able to buy a house. So it's
Yeah.
a very fascinating season that we're in as millennials. I think what we would love to focus on today is maybe more the investing mindset of how do people start to get in the door to real estate. Maybe that is just for home ownership, but maybe it is for building wealth. And we want to hear some of your expertise since you've done a little bit about, of it, but then all go back and forth in what we're seeing in the industry in just unique different ways, whether you have, I don't know, 10,000 to put down on something, or you have 100,000 and
Sure.
you're like, how do I actually build this and not just let it sit in my bank account? Because if you're doing that, let me tell you right now, anybody that's listening, like you are literally throwing money away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think there's definitely some luck that's been involved on at least in my case, and so I we'll talk about that. But yeah, I think if you're interested, now's the time. Why wait? If you again pre-COVID, if you waited and now the housing market still is on a tear, you're sitting here kind of kicking yourself a little bit, going, why didn't I pull the trigger?
I also know so many people, so many friends that are like, I'm waiting for it to crash. And I'm like, I don't necessarily think we're headed towards that. Not to say that we couldn't.
Right.
I mean, like,
There are
life
bubbles.
happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. San Francisco right now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah.
rough.
But especially in this area, in the
Yeah.
DFW area,
Yeah.
we're kind of in our own little market,
Yeah.
and pretty protected because of how many people are coming and industries are coming as well. Not just individuals, but
Yes.
industries are coming.
Yes, we're bringing in more headquarters, more companies,
Yeah.
more people, right? It's just, it's a math equation,
Yeah.
right? Like that's
100%.
all it is.
It's a
but
math equation.
It matters, right?
Yeah.
So fascinating that you kind of mentioned like again waiting and stuff like that. So Steve Brown, who just announced his retirement, he was the Dallas Morning News real estate editor for the last 40 years.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago, his daughter and her fiance, whatever at the time, basically said, hey, we're thinking about buying a house before we get married. And he was like, I'd wait. Right. And he proceeded to say that for like 6 years. Okay. He was like, the house that they could have bought 6
Yeah.
years ago
Yeah.
Yeah.
would have literally been half the price. And that's the Dallas Morning News real estate editor. So yeah, we're on a pretty crazy tear,
Yeah.
and DFW is a great market. And honestly, talking about investments, there are a lot of challenges. I do think Dallas is a great market if you're trying to get your first house and trying to think about it as an investor, right? I tend to be a little bit more disconnected. I'm a single guy. I can kind of like not care that it's like a home.
Yeah.
Which I know is maybe a little bit against the podcast name. Sorry. But it's, for me, it was, I want to get in. I want to start
Yeah.
building equity. I want to start,
Yeah.
making some money, right? Like,
Yeah.
and there's no better way, in my opinion, to do that really than real estate. And for me, it was literally, I lived in an apartment in a fun area of Dallas, Oak Cliff, Bishop Arts, and which love the area. And
Shout out.
I lived in this small little apartment, and I didn't have a washer and dryer. So I actually had to take, I actually loved this part. I don't know why more people don't do this. I went to the local like laundromat.
Laundromat,
It was a dry cleaner, and they would do wash and fold. And you just bring in like a bag, and they would like tell me by pound. It would be like, $15 or whatever, which yes, it's $15. But wash and fold, like it's done. I just pick it up.
Yeah, but that $15 doesn't go very far when you've got a family of like 5.
Okay. Yes, a little different. But I have big clothes. Okay, so there's that. But it was awesome. Like I love doing it, and they shut down one of the main roads to get there. And so there was just one morning I was like, I gotta take my laundry, and I went down the actual street that I lived on was 8th Street, and I just decided to go straight down 8th Street and then cut across to get to the laundry place. And I'm driving, and like 2 blocks away, there's an older guy, and he's putting out a sign for sale by owner. So I stop. I'm like, hey, blah, blah. He doesn't really speak much English. And he's like, call my son. I called the son. And so like, that was how I, had I looked at houses? Yes. Had I really thought about pulling the trigger? Yes and no. Right. And I always wanted, I'm a deal guy. I love a deal. Right. Yeah. Whether that's Amazon or whether that's real estate, I want a deal. So I called, I talked to the son, and eventually we kind of came into agreement and bought my first house for much less than I, probably should have, right? Nice. And again, that's a for sale by owner, and that was luck. That was maybe fate, whatever it is, right? But one of the, besides the area, which I love, one of the kind of big proponents is it was a 3-2 house. I knew I was going to have to put money into it, but it had an ADU, right? So an accessory dwelling unit over a garage. And I remember thinking, as a person who looks at things as investments, I can buy this house, I can fix up this back unit, I can put a renter in there and decrease my mortgage payment, right? So now, I'll go ahead and ruin the ending here. I still haven't fixed up that accessory dwelling unit, but excuse me. But I did.
Good thought.
It was a great thought.
You will though. You'll get there.
I will. Yeah. Part of that is because you start getting into these things, and I realized that I was going to basically have to renovate the whole house, top to bottom. All the way, as they say, down to the studs. So I, had to obviously spend a lot of money to do that. Once I got in, it's been a great investment for me. I lived there. So I bought that in 2019. It took me 9 months to renovate, which was rough. And then when I moved in, obviously there's always still more stuff to do, but I lived there for 2 years, 3 years. And then I bought another place in the Lakewood area, Dallas, and I'm looking at that as like another investment type opportunity. So kind of a flip. Kind of what I call slow flip. Yeah. That's kind of like what
the slowest of flips.
Which I think for younger people, it's a great way to start, right?
Yeah.
Like you buy the house, you live in the house.
Yeah.
And then but you're thinking long term, I'm going to end up either renting this or selling and, and making money on it. The very first house that I bought, I converted the garage into a 3rd bedroom because I knew it was in the TCU area of Fort Worth, and I knew
get those kids.
This garage doesn't matter to this market. Yeah. This garage doesn't matter, but what does matter is another bedroom. Yep. That's an extra set of income that I can make because most people rent per bedroom, right? So, I was able to turn around and that investment was the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I put in, I had to save up. It's not like you're sitting on tons of cash here when you're in your 20s, 30s, right? So hopefully 30s. But anyway, it's like one of those things where I was able to take that, and if you're looking at it as an investment for your future and long-term wealth, and I think there are a lot of people that don't necessarily think that way, and they just think I'm not ready to do this.
Yeah,
you're never ready. You're never ready to do it.
Yeah, I think it's easy for people to go, well, I saw this and I really want this, and then they don't realize that that's going to cost 5 times what it should cost. Maybe you decide, hey, I really want a fireplace. Well, it might not be worth adding a fireplace if it's going to cost you $15,000.
Even for the return.
There's not a lot of value there.
Right.
So there are 3 investment strategies that I do think are pretty applicable for today, for like people that are looking to jump into the residential real estate market.
Okay, so, what are those?
Yeah, so
give us the 3.
Old school, flip. Everyone's heard of it. I think that can be a little bit market to market. There's some markets that I think are maybe a little bit stronger than others.
Agreed.
DFW is kind of historically been a little bit more of a challenging market for flips, so that doesn't mean you can't do it. And a flip, that's you're putting in very very little, or you're taking out I think it's like not a hard money loan, but it's it
can
loan.
be.
Yeah. Where I know it's like a really aggressive payment for a short period of time, but that's kind of the goal. so that's an approach for some people. It's obviously it's the most risky, and you need to have cash to be able to, put into the property. The goal is to get it, renovate as fast as possible, get the value up, and then sell it, right? Like that is, that's the flip. That's one method, and I know that there are people that still do it, and they, can do really well. Probably a little bit more risky than I would want to go, especially if it was like my first house. So that's not the path that I took. I bought, my first house. I decided that I was probably going to approach this as a slow flip. So a slow flip is a flip, but it's you need to wait like 2 years because then you can avoid capital gains taxes, which is pretty massive if you can do it. So there's a little bit, there's some challenges also to a slow flip. You need to, potentially live in a construction site, which a lot of people don't want to do. I don't blame them. It has its pluses and minuses. Plus it's pretty unsettling sometimes when you're looking around and it's kind of constantly in front of you, even though it's like where you live in your home, to go, oh my gosh, there's so much that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
Like that can be daunting. And I
Kind
understand
of like mentally overwhelming over a course of period.
It can. And if you're a compartmentalizer like I am, thanks mom and dad, then
we'll talk about
then
that.
It's let's jump in. Therapy with if for me it's not too tough, and also I will say, like, I pretty much get the project to where I feel comfortable enough living in there. Yes, there's stuff. There's always stuff, right?
Well, and you also know the end reward, so I wonder if that kind of helps you
it's
compartmentalize.
temporary pain, but
100%.
the long term. Yeah.
So a little less risky, potentially more reward. I mean, I will say, again, it took me like 9 months to just renovate the first house. So I was already like, by the time I moved in, I was really like, I'm almost a year in at this point. It's just one more year to wait, and then I can avoid capital gains tax and everything else. So I do think that that's a really great strategy for people, again, that maybe you're, looking to get into something or into a neighborhood that, maybe is a little bit out of your price range, and you buy the ugly one and you fix it up, and then you can, potentially make some money off of it. Now, that plan shifted, and I ended up, like I said, kind of renting it and turning it into an Airbnb. But again, it still works as kind of a short flip opportunity. And then the last one is the Burr method.
Burr.
I'm gonna go with Burr. Maybe there's a better way to say it, but that is kind of what you were alluding to earlier, Betty, is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. And I think repeat's probably optional for some people, but I do think that that's a great method too, and that's one that you see a lot of people that talk about investments. They bring up a lot, right? Because it does make sense. It's a good way to build a portfolio. It's a good way to build wealth, and so it's similar in line to a flip, and then you get to the part where you do the refi, you cash out, and then you start doing that for the next one. So like what you did, like to start kind of building your portfolio, that can be a really, really great strategy. Again, it can take a little bit more. I mean, they all take some sort of cash up front. That one's probably a little bit more cash heavy than like a slow flip, because if you can live with it, you can do room by room on a slow flip over 2 years, which is great. Now,
especially if you're handy too, if you're able to do it yourself. Did you say I'm not?
I'm not. Yeah, I'll just tell you right now, I'm not. So I've learned this.
I love that. But I do think that if that's your natural bent and you have interest in real estate, that is actually a really great way to go about it, is to buy that first house, like you said, maybe get it on the more like fix it side, and then just slowly go after those things, wait those 2 years, and not only is it going to appreciate in this market within 2 years, most likely, but you will put so much into it that you're going to get quite a bit back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, these are 3 ways. So far, at least one of those ways I feel like it's kind of worked for me. So, I would recommend those, but there's a lot of different ways. And, ultimately my goal would be to, build a portfolio, have the mailbox money. That would be nice, right? I as much as I love doing what I do, if you told me that I could go retire on a cruise boat tomorrow, I would do that. Right. So I'm done. But I think that there's multiple different ways, and they can be, again, maybe a little bit daunting the first time, but that's what I thought the first time too. And like I said, I mean, it was a 6-figure renovation I did on the first house, right?
Wow.
It was a lot, but that being said, like I'm going to make a lot of money.
And the
off of that house.
location, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, and maybe that's kind of one of the big points that we didn't really even talk about is like, find some value adds, right? The ADU
Yes.
that I had at this first house, the location's great. And there was a lot of things going for it. I added a bathroom. That's a nice perk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that. But I and the house that I moved into is basically on a double lot, right? It's a small house on a double lot. So, there's some things there that you can kind of look for, but it's so important. Like, I can't express this enough. Like, it's so important to buy right. It's so important if you can to try and, you might love this house that has the beautiful front door or whatever, right? Or it has the bathroom that you've always dreamed of.
Yeah.
But maybe you can do that yourself for a
Right.
lot less and be able to build some equity.
Especially if you have the mindset of, I want this to be good for our wealth, to build our wealth, then you really don't need to be buying a home for this is perfect and move-in ready.
Yeah.
You need to be looking for more of the deal that others don't want to touch. Now, understand what that is, because my husband and I have bought 2 homes that we've had to completely replace the plumbing. And I wouldn't suggest that for most. But I think there's obviously, with good inspections and do all the things that you need to do, if you can find a deal that's mostly cosmetic, maybe it's even off market, a family member, a friend, whatever that might be, that you can kind of step into with the future in mind, then don't look for perfect. Don't look for, like you said, the favorite door or the best bathroom.
Yep.
Look for something that you could go, oh, I could knock down a couple walls maybe.
Yeah.
I could slap some paint on this, update a few things, and the return would be great.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I've always wanted to get into real estate investing and things like that, and I honestly didn't know the pathway for us. And I feel like it was kind of maybe kind of all of our stories to a certain extent. So to give encouragement to the people that are listening, if you keep looking for it, I feel like things tend to happen. Get in the right circles too, people that are already doing it, because they have knowledge where you don't necessarily have to stumble. You can kind of make better choices. But I know when we stumbled upon it, we essentially thought we were going to have to rent because of our financial situation. Betty over here, this was almost 3 years ago now, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe you could buy.
Yeah, she just made that statement, and so we checked with the lender, and that day was approved for more than we thought we'd be approved for. And a week later, we found a house and put a contract down, and that was during COVID. And when the interest rates were very low, I think I got a 2.65 on that house.
Keep that house.
Which, being a first-time home buyer too, I didn't realize like how just incredible that was.
Yeah.
I don't think
At the
any
time.
of, just so we're clear, I don't think any of us that were buying our house for like first house then really understood. We're just like, I guess this is good. This is normal, right?
I love all
No
those
idea.
memes that are like, had I only known that I should have been buying real estate in 8th grade. I'm like, I feel this. Such a
Yeah,
deep
of course.
But what happened is we were in that house for 2 years. We had no thought of like, oh, it's time to move or time to leave. But even the living room that we're currently sitting in, this house came on the market in the same neighborhood as our old house, and came and looked at it, and we're like, we need this house because we have some future dreams to foster and adopt, things like that. The house just had a perfect layout for that. Again, we utilized Betty in this setting, and I was walking through the house. I'm like, we can't afford this. So there's no way that we can do this. Like, this doesn't make sense. And she's like, why don't you just ask?
I was like, you don't know. I say this all the time.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is what always stops people.
Yeah.
That's why so many people, I'm like, if you can afford to buy a house, buy a house.
Yeah.
Fear the unknown.
Yeah. But
Agreed.
people, and then it's like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, maybe you just
Yeah.
pay that off, and then you're able,
Yeah.
So anyways.
So get curious, basically,
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
we're saying. But in that, asked again a lender, and sure enough, we got approved.
Yeah.
And what we did then is we turned the first house into a rental. So we didn't buy and renovate that other house. We
Yeah.
didn't burr it.
Sure.
But but we did kind of that same process
Yeah.
of, okay, we're going to get into another house. And then because we bought a house that is way bigger than what we needed, and honestly, even maybe what we could afford on our own, we decided what I call, and what I've kind of heard in the industry, is like house hacking.
Yes. Yeah.
We decided to rent out 3 of the bedrooms because it's a 6-bedroom house, and there's just my husband and I and our little girl. And so we've done that. You have to have the right personality for it. You have to enjoy people. So if you don't if you don't like people, don't do that. But it has been actually just so beautiful to see each of the housemates on their own journey and how being in one room, having access to a great house, but not having to pay even like what you'd be paying in a studio apartment or in a 1-bedroom apartment in this area, it's setting them off on the right foot to be able to save so they can go towards their own dreams. Not saying that everybody has a dream to own a home, but they're able to save. And then it's helping us pay the bills / pay down the mortgage.
Right.
Yep.
On a house that we wouldn't have been able to afford on our own. So now we have a larger asset that somebody else is helping us pay down.
Absolutely.
And so if I had any encouragement to anyone out there, but specifically because we started with like millennials and younger, kind of those generations that seem to be struggling, is number one, if you feel like you really don't have much at all, maybe look at finding a room to rent and really like downsizing as much as you can and saving and hustle. Like this is the time to hustle. And I think we have a lot of hustle culture where we run ourselves into the ground. And I'm not talking about that, but like rearrange some things, rearrange some mental priorities and go after that dream. Or on the other hand, if you already have the down payment for a house, get in a house. It doesn't even have to be this situation where it was too big. You could just get in an appropriate size house for you, but rent out of one of your rooms, and now you have somebody else helping you pay down the mortgage.
I think maybe get creative.
Yeah.
Right.
Get
Unfortunately, there's just no playbook. I mean, I just think there's no playbook anymore. Right.
Yeah.
What our grandparents were able to do, it was
not
very
possible.
formulaic.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
we're not afforded that luxury anymore. So
Yeah.
get creative. If that means that you buy a 3-bedroom house and you're one person in one room and you have, two roommates, then do it. Play to your strengths. I mean, I don't know if I could do that at this point in life, and it's awesome that you guys can.
Yeah.
But for me, my strengths are more being able to provide the economics and then more on like the design side, right?
Yeah.
I told you I'm not handy. So I'm not going to be able to like spend my free time on the weekends like today I'm doing flooring. Like I'm not going to do
my
it.
hammer.
Yes, I have one hammer. It's great.
Don't know where to find it.
Yeah, exactly. It's somewhere. But yeah, I think just being able to be creative and find way. I mean, even just getting creative in like how you source. Like I think it's really cool. And obviously Betty's awesome, so it doesn't surprise me. But a lot of people don't source investments the traditional way of like the realtor. There's a whole nother line of, like you said, with different relationships. There's wholesalers, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a whole nother world. You can reach out direct if there's a house you
There's
love.
so many ways, so many ways to do it.
Yeah.
I've said this before, but like Walt Disney, he was turned down by like 49 banks.
Yeah.
He went, by the time he got to the 50th bank, they approved it, and he's Walt Disney. And look at like what, but he was persistent. He didn't, he found a way, right? And I think it's getting creative, playing to your strengths.
Yep.
I tell people you don't have to know how to put flooring down. You just need to know a guy.
No.
And hopefully you know a guy that's pretty affordable, right? My previous boss, he actually bought a duplex, and he lived in one side and rented out the other side.
Okay. So you brought up the D word, duplex. That D word. And or triplex or fourplex, whatever. So I will say I think that there's so much competition nowadays that I just really don't know if in my opinion, I don't think that that's a great investment strategy at this point.
This was years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
because
I think that probably would boil down to connections. Like those are special moments where you have a friend that will give you a deal, or at this point with how many people are interested in doing this.
I think that there's so much institutional money that, and candidly, I'm a little piece of that in Fort Worth with some of the stuff that I've done with I know, bad. But like I would love to own a fourplex, right? I'd love to own a duplex, especially, in Dallas, something that I could, see. They're priced to a point where there's just no, like, you're going to buy that as an investment. When people used to buy duplexes and fourplex, whatever, apartments, they would buy because you basically most of the time could turn around and immediately not have to pay. You're getting more rent money, more income than
getting
your
some
mortgage,
cash flow.
right? There was cash
And that's
flow.
not the case
Yes.
anymore.
That is, I haven't seen, and I look obviously. I haven't seen a deal that cash flows in DFW in a few years now.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we can state too, is if you are just so gung-ho about this and so serious about it, you can look in other markets.
Yeah.
You can own a house in another market. Speaking of that, like I'm currently listing a house that's a rental and the owners live in California. And it's here, the rental is, but you can look in other markets. It's just going to maybe take some time to get your footing. In a situation like that, I would highly recommend finding like a good realtor or a good investor in that area to guide you, because you're not boots on the ground, things like that.
Yep.
But there's property management companies that can help you, all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
So there's always a way, but yeah, it's a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, I definitely would say if you're listening to this and you're just starting to figure out whether you want to buy, a home and you want to look at an investment, I don't know if, and maybe you can source one. Please give it your best shot. Like I said, I'm on a lot of wholesale lists. I get multiple emails every day. I blow Betty up with different deals and different ideas that I have. And even on the wholesale list, when I get like a duplex or a fourplex in, there was one recently on like in the M streets of Dallas. They wanted $850,000. Okay, the rents were $1,500 a month. So, okay, $6,000 you're putting in. So there's the 1% rule that people used to go by, where you want to make 1% of the rent. So that doesn't apply. Your mortgage, I just know it won't cash flow, right? Yeah. The person that bought that from the wholesaler, by the way, put it back on the market like a couple weeks after I got the email for $1,050,000. Wow. So, I mean, maybe he'll make money that way as like a wholesale, type quick
just
flip. But,
snagged it and ran.
Yeah, so it's just a challenge.
Something else I do want to speak to while we're on this little train about renting out. In my opinion, I don't think, because people think that they need a property manager. Like, okay, you guys, you rented your house out, right?
You definitely don't if you're local.
Yeah.
I tell
but
people,
if you're out of state,
that's completely different. And also when you hit a point where you have so many, like if you have 20, yes, you can't manage that yourself. But people are like, oh, I have to pay 10 to 12% out to a property management company. I'm like, no, you don't. And now there's strategic things you can do, right? Like, you need to know a good plumber. You need to know an HVAC guy. You need to know, and if you don't, you find someone, right? Put a lockbox on the back of the door so you're not having to drive back and forth. Yeah. But it's something that I've noticed, it almost deters people from wanting to do, because they're like, oh, I don't, I'm going to have to give up 10% for a property management company. And you really don't always have to do that.
No, if it's one property, I think that's pretty manageable.
I have 3, and I used to do that though. So
I think it also
a little more used to it.
I think it depends on the tenant. Make sure you're getting a good tenant, and then also the property itself. Yeah,
because if you've lived in there, you know what some of these pitfalls are, what some of the problems.
I would agree, but if you're getting a very sturdy and stable property, I think that is helpful.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are going back and forth. Because I even think about ours, like there were several things after we rented it that happened. And luckily, my husband is very handy and we're right down the street. So we were able to field that. But I see the benefit to having a property management company if you're not skilled in that area, if you've already got good cash flow and you don't have time.
And you don't want to mess with
it. But
if
you have a little bit of time and a little bit of knowledge and like some connections for what you might need, then 100% you don't need it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I think too, before we wrap up, my thought is just hearing us with all these different ideas is if you're sitting here and thinking, I don't have money for a down payment for the first one, or I don't have the connections that I need, or I don't feel like I have enough knowledge, then I would start to go seek out those things first before you try to find a property.
Sure.
Seek connections, get in real estate groups. There's so many real estate groups, local and online. Oh, yeah. I think local would be amazing, especially if you're trying to stay local, because, people have the eyes and the boots on the ground. But go get the knowledge that you need. Continue to listen to podcasts, read books, again, get in those connection groups because people do love to help. I think they really do. And even if not everyone is like that, you'll certainly find people that are like that. And then lastly, if you don't have the finances, I was listening to another podcast the other day, and I just love this. It's a very high-end investor. Like, he's investing in boutique hotels now, like all around the country, that kind of thing, doing massive flips. And he was just talking about, he's like, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. Invest in yourself, develop your skill sets, go make some money, and then get in it. But like, kind of do things in a healthy order, in a healthy way for you. So I want to encourage you, anyone listening, that there's different pathways. Sometimes we stumble upon them. Sometimes it's very purposeful. But if it's something that you love to do, don't give up on it. Keep going. But just know where you are in the race, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And take stock of that and do what you need to do first. And then start to go after the properties.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you have anything else that
Anything
you'd
you
love
want to add?
bring to the table?
Except for that.
Oh.
Are we going into the DJ segment? Because Mike,
We need to
a
let
DJ.
everyone know that you're a DJ.
Obviously, a year from now, I'll be, DJing at all the best clubs all over the world.
100%.
Because, of course, so follow me at Shide Sounds.
yes,
On
on Instagram.
on all the platforms. I love what you were just speaking about. I am a person that doesn't do well just with time because I feel like I need to be doing stuff. So in the last year, I've decided I'm gonna sell hats and I'm starting a pet brand, which is wild. I got into this DJ school thing on a whim because my musical career is kind of stalled out over the past 5 years, and again have a background in that and just wanted a new creative outlet, and it's been really fun. But it's everyone's different. Some people just can hang out and be fine, and I've got thumbs that never stop moving, I guess. So
got ADD for
pretty much
productivity and growth.
We'll see where it goes, but it's been exciting, and have to see one of my gigs sometime.
I love
That'd
it.
be great.
I love it.
Anyways,
Let's do it.
Shide.
Shide.
My
So that's how people
my
can-
stage name.
Shy.
This is
Just
how
shy.
people can
Shide,
get a hold of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
and then if you want to ask him real estate questions, you can do that too.
yeah, I've got.
Or if you
sure,
need any
I've got that
commercial
too.
real estate
So,
needs.
Yeah, and like I said, commercial real estate broker is my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And I work for a company called Site Selection Group, based here in Dallas. Like I said, we do work all over the country. So
Well, thank you so
Yes.
much
Thanks
for
for
being
having me.
here.
This is great.
You're the best. I've loved this. I've loved picking your brain. I appreciate you coming out.
I love the laughs.
I mean, the laughs.
You need
I
that
knew
on a
I was
Friday
like, Michael's
afternoon,
hilarious.
you know?
I just know I'm gonna have fun.
and I didn't say any curse words.
I mean, you brought in the D word, but then you
I recovered.
Yeah.
I recovered.
You did.
Thank
That
you.
was nice. Oh my gosh.
Cannot.
Perfect.